What is a hero? A mythological figure, often of divine descent, endowed with great strength or ability? An illustrious warrior? No. It's a person admired for achievements and noble qualities, one who shows great courage. Welcome to the What's a Hero podcast, where we dive deep into what a hero is and what makes them that hero. I'm your host, Ken Frownfelter, and I'm going to be introducing you to some of the world's most likely and unlikely heroes. You may have never heard of them before, and they most likely have never met you. But they all have one thing in common. They are ready to do whatever it takes to help make you better, even if it means sacrificing everything for you. Let's get into it. This is episode 61 of the What's a Hero podcast with me, Ken Frownfelter. Now, I know you just heard the opening that I always have on here that kind of gives the definition of what a hero is. I kind of want to go into a little more detail on that and what that is. When you hear the word hero, do you think someone with superhuman strength or someone you know? A good hero can be hard to find. A hero is selfless, a genuinely good person. And someone gets the undivided attention of all of us and causes change. Someone willing to risk their own life to save another. What is a hero? Is it what we see in the movies? A man in a cape? When I think of a hero, I think of somebody like Batman, said Tyshawn Murray. The people that we set up as heroes are people that generally go above and beyond in terms of the call of duty. They do things that are extraordinary, said Dr. Nick Carden of the Renaissance Center. We all remember the images of those who rushed into the burning World Trade Center on September 11th. And now those who defend our nation. Webster's defines a hero as a mythological or legendary figure, often of divine descent, endowed with great strength or ability. That's what kids tend to think. Superman, Spider-Man, and Batman, said Haley Suggs. Sarah Perry says a hero is a person who saves the day. He's the one who has all the courage, and he has responsibility. It turns out a hero doesn't have to fly. They're often grounded. I'd say my mom, because my daddy wasn't really around, and my mom always made sure I had what I needed, said Jonathan Newberry. A hero is somebody that you look up to. You know that you try to be like, Robert Sanders said. Someone like Cory Jarvis, who never thought twice about running up to the semi that was about to explode. He then helped Cody Murphy free his father Ralph. I've always been raised to help people, and when you see somebody that needs help like that, you just can't turn away from it. Would you have done the same thing? What makes someone rush up to this burning wreckage to help someone they don't even know? They probably are people that have been influenced by and have been helped by or have been modeled or raised to have those values, Dr. Carden said. It's true of Jarvis, who received second-degree burns for his heroic actions. My dad's, he's always, helped others when they need it. He's a good man himself, and if it would have been him there, he would have done the same thing, Cory said. Not everyone would do the same. Some simply stand by and watch while others rush in. Psychologists call it the bystander effect. I don't know if I could have. Maybe other people, but not me, said Cory. Heroes basically give us our models of things that we aspire to do, whether those are our values, that's issues related to courage, integrity, honesty, said Dr. Carden. Some say it's Jarvis's actions that are heroic, but Cory didn't have to do it. Or maybe he did. It's just something, that in my mind told myself I needed to do to help them. And if I'm a hero, I'm a hero. But I just felt like it was something I had to do. I couldn't let nobody get hurt. We all have the ability to be heroic. Psychologists say it can be taught. It starts with helping out your fellow man, just like Cory Jarvis did on this Camilla highway. It's the best feeling in the world. There's nothing better than helping somebody, said Cory. For any hero, it's enough just knowing they helped someone else. That's what makes them a true hero. Heroic actions don't go unnoticed. In 1904, Andrew Carnegie set up the Carnegie Hero Fund. In the last 107 years, 9,300 medals have been awarded, along with $32 million in accompanying grants. So even Andrew Carnegie noted that we need to recognize our heroes. We need to not only recognize them, but we need to let them know we appreciate them and we appreciate the work they did and continue to do. Now you take this guy who ran up to this burning truck, got second degree burns, saved this guy's life. The whole thing, absolutely heroic. Agreed. It just happened to be he was there at that time. Had he not been there at that time, maybe somebody else would have done it. Maybe somebody else wouldn't. The fact of the matter is, it was by happenstance that he was there. Possibly the grace of God. I want that person there at that time. But did anybody call him specifically and say, hey, I need your help. I need you to go over here and help these people. Run into that burning building. Run into that burning truck. Go lift this over here. Go help these people out of this horrible situation. Did anybody go to this person and ask him to go over there? No, he was there. Now we take other folks who we regularly talk to on this podcast, our firefighters, police officers, our veterans, nurses. They are on standby for situations just like this. They are standing by. They are waiting for this to happen. As a matter of fact, some of them go out of their way to look for these things to happen so they can run in and help other people. I don't think we grasp that sometimes. And I say we, and I say that in a general sense. But I don't think a lot of people grasp this notion that there are people who will go out of their way, they will put themselves in harm's way so they can help other people because it is needed. They need to be there to help other people. Because if they don't do it, who does? And that's my reason for starting this podcast, to showcase heroes who go out of their way, who have gone out of their way, who have had horrible things happen to them and still come out on the other side and are victories with the trauma and with the nightmares and with the physical pain and with the all the stressors that come with that. How they continue to live their lives, raise their families, love their neighbor, serve other people, and still desire to do that. You talk to all these retired cops that I've had on here, or retired firefighters, whatever, you talk to every single one of them, they would go back into uniform in a minute, knowing they could be helping somebody. The hero, their mindset, the way they go about doing what it is that they do is ingrained in them. It is intrinsic in them. It is something that has been built up from time before they realized it. That's why we go back and start looking at the child that these people were. How did they grow up? How did they become who they are? And now, are they honoring that little kid in which they once were? That's why I asked the question, who were you growing up? What did you do as a child, were you out playing cops and robbers or cowboys and Indians, riding your bikes, playing music? Did you sit inside watching TV the whole time? And as we ask the question and get the answers, we start determining that a lot of these people spent time outside. They worked on themselves. They didn't realize it as a little kid. You don't realize you're working on yourselves, whether it's your social structure or your physical fitness, your ability to use your imagination, whatever the case may be. As a kid, they didn't realize that's what they were doing. However, that is what they were doing. When the kids that just sit and watch TV or play video games as little kids, and that's all they did, you start seeing some kind of a behavior shift. You start seeing some kind of a different person as they become an adult. And we can all look back and we can see people who did not get outside and do things with their lives. We can see people that chose to sit in front of the TV and let somebody entertain them instead of using their imagination, going out, developing things, working, or building, or, constructing forts, riding bikes, taking chances and risks. That's the sort of thing that people who want to go out and do things for other people, that's what they do. Now, am I a psychologist? Do I know all the answers? Do I know this is a 100% empirical fact? No, I'm not going to say that. But what I do know is by looking and talking with people and at people, let me turn that around. By looking at people and their lives, talking with them, that I start seeing similarities between these people, and that is where I get the idea that heroism, the desire to serve and help other people, is a little bit deeper. There's a little bit more to it than just, hey, I needed a job, so I went after a job. Now, some of them said, this is a thing to do, so maybe I'll try my hand at that. And it turns out they were right. The ones that say, I'll try my hand at that and don't last, then they realize that's just not for them. That's not the kind of person they are. And you know what? Fine. That's okay. That's okay. I once had a field trainer that told me, said, this isn't your gig. You need to be honest with yourself and choose not to be here. Go find something else. And that's fine. Nobody's going to look down on you if you choose not to do it. The only one that you're bothering is yourself because your ego is in your way, right? So as we talk with people, as we learn who they are, we start seeing this common denominator, this desire to run into the problem, run into the fire, run into danger for people they don't even know, for things they have no idea of why it's happening, who caused it, what kind of danger lurks on the other side of that. And I don't mean, obviously we know what a fire would be. We know what fire is going to do. But do we know that ambush of some kind? Do we know that saving this person's life is, in a couple of years, they're going to turn around and they're going to be the reason this person now, is being assaulted? There's all these different things. And that's a weird thought process, I know. However, you never know what's going to happen. However, you do with what you're faced with at the time, you deal with that, knowing that it's the ultimate good at that time. If it's, do I run into that building and save the people so they don't get burned up? Not realizing that this person the person I'm saving is a future mass murderer, or, they have molested children and they're in there. Do I go in there and run in there and save their life? Or do I let them burn? And then let's say you don't know whatsoever. What do? You go in and you save lives, right? Of course. The trick is not realizing, not looking at that picture in that far off consequence. You look at what is going on right now and you determine, this is what I need to do. This is who I am. I run towards danger. And that is how I'm wired. That's how God made me. And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to talk today about a lot of folks that way that decided to make these decisions. And I don't have a guest with us today. However, what we do have a book called Police Heroes. It was written by a gentleman named Chuck Whitlock. And these are true stories of courage about America's brave men and women and canine officers. And these are some of these stories are they're a little bit intense. Some are a little bit, I guess they could be scary at the time. I'm sure they were. But the common denominator with them is that each one of these people are heroes. Each one of them is the kind of person that runs towards danger. First one we're going to look at is about an Alaska State Trooper named Barry Croy. According to Alaska State Trooper Barry Croy, his wife didn't worry much about him when he was on duty. She worried more for the people who resisted arrest. My husband's a pretty tough guy, she'd say. Not many people who know Barry Croy would disagree with that sentence. Then again, the Alaska State Trooper has to be tough. 1/5 the size of the continental United States, Alaska consists of over 586,400 square miles of harsh mountains, huge glaciers, tundra forests, over 3,000 rivers, over 3 million lakes, and a coastline of 6,640 miles. The rugged nature of the state that makes it so extraordinarily beautiful also creates significant challenges for law enforcement. State troopers routinely deal with such extreme weather conditions as blizzards, avalanches, winds in excess of 100 miles per hour, sub-zero temperatures, hundreds of inches of snow each year, and heavy rains. The Alaska Territorial Police, established in the early 50s, as a response to the need for greater law enforcement in the territory, became divisions of the Department of Public Safety, Alaska's primary law enforcement agency for federal, state, and local laws, in 1959. When Alaska became a state that same year, the name was changed to the Alaska State Police, only to be changed again to the Alaska State Troopers in 1967. The Alaska State Troopers have 240 commissioned troopers and 190 civilian personnel. The troopers' major component are 5 detachments in Ketchikan, Palmer, Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Saldonta. Let me say that again. Saldotna, and a criminal investigation bureau. Serving in remote areas, Alaska State Troopers must be among the best trained police officers in the United States. They routinely face difficulties that other law enforcement officers seldom, if ever, come up against, and bring criminals to justice no matter where they might hide. The Alaska State Troopers are highly respected by Alaska's residents. When many of us think of a wilderness trip gone bad, the 1972 movie Deliverance immediately comes to mind. Based on the novel by James Dickey, the story is about 4 Atlanta businessmen, played by Burt Reynolds, John Voight, Ned Beatty, and Ronnie Cox, who take a weekend canoe trip. The trip starts out just as they'd imagined, and they enjoy the serenity of traveling down a scenic river in the woods. But soon their outdoor adventure turns into a nightmare. 2 menacing locals stalk the men as they move downstream, raping one of them and killing another. A film with many memorable images, Deliverance was great fiction, but the terror endured by the sportsmen was palpable. 10 men on a vacation in the wilderness of Alaska experienced their own terror in early September 1998. The outdoor enthusiasts were camping, hunting, and fishing on the Kobuk River, an uninhabited wilderness area about 400 miles northwest of Fairbanks, when they were robbed at gunpoint and threatened with death if they did not comply with the demands of 5 armed Native Alaskans. The 5 gunmen, Danny R. Custer, 29, Larry Custer Jr., 22, Henry Douglas, 39, Alan A. Tickett, 36, and Tony R. Tickett, 18, were from the small Alaskan town of Shunak, about 15 miles west of Kobuk. Their modus operandi was to float downriver until they saw some outdoorsmen who were camping or fishing along the river. Once they'd paddled their skiff to shore, one of the 5 would quietly check out the men by making small talk about the river and weather. While the sportsmen were distracted, the other 4, armed with rifles, would sneak up on them and rob them at gunpoint. Many of the victims thought these thugs would kill them. They were told to comply with the demands, or they would be shot, their bodies left in the woods where no one would find them. It appeared that these 5 men could do whatever they wanted to do, and no one could stop them. According to the information officer of the Alaska Department of Public Safety, during the trial, the prosecutor stated that the 5 armed robbers had thought it was funny that the victims' families might even hire them to look for the missing sportsmen. The gunmen found 3 separate groups of vacationers to terrorize. Only one of the vacationers was from Alaska. The rest were from across the lower 48. One of the victims managed to radio an outfitter who in turn contacted the National Park Service, and on September 7, 1998, at 8 a.m., a ranger from the National Park Service phoned Alaska State Trooper Barry Croy. In 1997, Croy had been assigned to the small town of Galena, Alaska. With a population of less than 1,000 people, Galena lies in the wilderness less than 1,000 miles as the crow flies from Juneau, the capital of Alaska. Travel to and from the town is mainly by plane and boat. Trooper Croy was one of the only 2 officers responsible for keeping the peace in an area of 32,000 square miles. He surprised me by saying that when he couldn't travel to remote villages north of Fairbanks to pick up a suspect, he'd call to ask the person to fly to Fairbanks and turn himself in. Croy told me the suspect would usually agree. They knew that if they did not comply, I'd come up and bring them in. When the accused arrived at the jail, he'd tell the jailer that Trooper Barry Croy told him to check in for lockup until a judge could hear the case. No matter how serious the crime, the suspect would be reimbursed for travel expenses, Croy added. On that September morning, Trooper Croy, armed with his M1 rifle, 6 clips of 8 rounds each, his standard issue 10mm handgun, and armor-piercing bullets, took off alone with a pilot in a small rented Cessna. Ironically, the pilot had flown some of the vacationing victims to the Kobuk River a few days earlier. Flying 2 hours to Bettles, Alaska, they picked up an unarmed federal park ranger. From there, the men flew in a piloted de Havilland Beaver plane on floats another 2 hours to the site where the incident had taken place. The victims told Croy that the suspects had escaped on a riverboat. Croy told me that the victims were scared to death. They'd taken what was to be the trip of a lifetime of many, only to find themselves at the business ends of rifles, being robbed virtually in the middle of nowhere. Each man would certainly return to his home with more than big fish stories to tell. The trooper began his search for the gunmen by plane and spotted the 18-foot boat in which they'd escaped, broken down in the middle of the Kobuk River. He asked the pilot to land near the shore but close to the inoperable boat. By the time the pilot landed, the 5 armed suspects had managed to paddle their boat to shore, pulling alongside one of the remote observation stations established by the U.S. Navy. 30 to 40 native Alaskans were standing nearby talking, and the fugitives mingled with the group. Croy told the pilot and the park ranger to remain with the plane, then walked over to an elderly woman. "Who are the 5 men who just arrived in that boat?" he asked. The woman pointed to a man in a black cap. Croy approached the man, placed him under arrest, cuffed him, and had him lie down on the ground. When Croy asked the woman who else had arrived in the boat, she pointed to a man in a multicolored hat. Again, the trooper walked up to his suspect and placed him under arrest. With 2 prisoners cuffed on the ground, Croy placed a 3rd suspect wearing a red cap on the ground. The elderly woman assured Croy that these were the only men who'd come from the riverboat. Croy returned to the boat, where he discovered a 4th suspect who appeared to be asleep, curled up on the center seat. His hands were tucked inside his jacket pockets, his eyes shut. Croy wondered, was the man hiding a gun in his pocket? Would he turn and shoot? The trooper came up on him quickly, placing his 10mm Smith & Wesson between the man's closed eyes as he said, "Slowly remove your hands from your pockets and stand up." When the suspect complied, Croy handcuffed him and had him lie on the bottom of the boat. With only 1 suspect remaining, Croy carefully turned 360 degrees to try to discern a likely hiding place. When he asked the man he'd just arrested where the 5th suspect was, the man said nothing but conspicuously stared at a tarp in the front of the boat. Croy noticed some slight movement under the tarp, so he drew his gun and ordered the suspect to come out. Nothing happened. Croy shouted, "Come out of there now!" Again, nothing happened. So he climbed over the man lying prone on the deck and flung back the tarp. Henry Douglas lunged toward Trooper Croy with his fists clenched. As the 2 men fought, they kept stepping on the prisoner lying handcuffed under their feet, inadvertently kicking him a couple times. Desperately trying to eject his opponent from the boat, Douglas hit and pushed Croy, but nothing worked. Instead, Douglas lost his footing and fell into the cold water. Before the current took him downstream, Croy scooped him from the river and handcuffed him. In addition to locating a number of stolen items in the boat, the trooper retrieved 6 weapons from the gunman. Croy marched his 5 prisoners back to the plane, where they were placed on the floor, where equipment is normally stored. Shortly after takeoff, as Douglas became increasingly angry about being captured, he expressed his displeasure by kicking the side of the plane and cursing loudly. The pilot, alarmed by the ruckus, informed Croy that the prisoner's actions could have dangerous repercussions. Once again, Croy pulled out his 10mm weapon, this time holding it to the forehead of his distraught passenger. Croy didn't mince words. "If you keep it up, I will shoot you. You are not going to cause this plane to crash." Understanding his predicament, Douglas acquiesced. The flight would not be without additional danger. As Croy looked out the right passenger window, he noticed oil spewing out of the engine. Then the engine stopped completely. Fortunately for all 7 passengers aboard, Alaskan pilots are among the best in the world. Oftentimes they repair their own engines, and they're accustomed to flying in extreme weather conditions. This pilot had plenty of experience. In fact, he'd once landed a plane with both engines out. He gave Trooper Croy a thumbs-up signal, indicating that he shouldn't worry, and took the plane in safely using the air currents. First stop, a camp where all 3 groups of the victimized sportsmen had congregated. One can just imagine the victim's shock when Croy asked them to come over to the plane to identify their attackers. Handcuffed and sitting on the floor of the plane, the 5-some were no longer so fierce. After the victims made positive identifications, Trooper Croy and his charges flew the 2-hour trip to Bettles to drop off the Ranger. Fire trucks and an ambulance were standing by as the disabled plane flew in, following a safe landing. Trooper Croy removed his prisoners from the plane, then handcuffed the 5 suspects to a railing in front of the country store to await a replacement plane. The charter service sent a twin-engine Navajo to take Croy and his prisoners to the 200-mile journey to Fairbanks. Around 11:30 p.m., a little more than 15 hours after Croy first received the report, he booked the 5 suspects into the Fairbanks State Jail. They were held on 10 counts, each of armed robbery and assault in the 3rd degree. All 5 pleaded guilty to armed robbery and assault with a deadly weapon. 4 of the suspects received 3-year sentences, while Henry Douglas received a 7-year term in state prison. What was the motive of the 5 men? One of the suspects said that the white hunters were on what they considered their land, so they decided to mess with them, according to a local newspaper report. Bold and determined Alaska State Trooper Barry Croy made a daring capture of 5 dangerous men. His actions epitomized the undaunted, unflinching nature necessary to survive in the Alaskan wilderness. The National Association of Police Organizations, in selecting Trooper Croy as one of its 1999 top cops, stated, "Such bravery is all in a day's work for Trooper Barry Croy. He rushed to the rescue of the crime victims in an area so remote that there could be no hope for backup." Croy also received a Meritorious Service Award. After 20 years as a trooper, 52-year-old Barry Croy retired on January 31st, 2001. As one would imagine, he remains active during his retirement. He tries to play hockey at least once a week, but when I last spoke to him, he was staying off the ice while a broken knuckle, a hockey injury, healed. He and his wife, Dora, of 32 years, and a nurse, have 2 sons, Barry Jr., a child psychologist, and David Scott, who works for one of the major airlines. The Alaska State Troopers surely miss Barry Croy. And if you recall, several episodes ago, we spoke with Gwen Grimes, who was a state trooper at one point, and the things that the state trooper of Alaska have to go do, they go by themselves. And like you heard in that story, he's out there by himself. He has no backup. He has just what he brings with him. And I mean, not a lot of people use 10 millimeter anymore. However, that's the weapon that he had. He was able to get these people to stop doing what they were doing and go under arrest. No problem, right? I don't know if there's some people just that have never taken somebody under arrest before, and it's not an everyday thing. It's not an easy thing. Some people do not want to go to jail. And you'll see videos like this all the time where, people are running, they're either running or they're driving a car, going the wrong way on the freeway, doing something like that. They get in a shootout with the cops and they say, "I ain't going back to prison," whatever the case is, right? They do not want to be arrested. These guys, obviously this Douglas guy didn't want to be arrested. The other 2, they saw something that they did not want to mess with in Croy. There was a guy, he was a cop killer, and his whole, he got arrested, he killed a police officer, and he got arrested for it. And they were talking to him later, and they asked him, it turned out that there had been 2 police officers that had come to his house the previous days. One showed up, and he talked to him, and he never did anything to him, just let him go. Second one, same thing. Third one shows up, and he said, "Hey," and he kills him. And they asked him, "Why did you kill this guy, but you didn't kill those other 2? And he said, "Well, this guy, he looked like an easy tool or an easy target. The other 2 guys, they held themselves, they carried themselves as if they knew what they were doing," as I'm assuming Croy did as well. The 3rd police officer that got killed, he appeared to be weaker. He appeared to be slovenly. He appeared to be whatever it was that this guy determined would be an easy target. Which just goes to show you that there is more to this. Yes, you have to have a good mind in your head. You've got to have that mindset that says, not today. You've got to be smart. You've got to be able to talk. But you also have to be able to carry yourself, present yourself well, present yourself better than you do. You need to be working out. You need to be able to confront that dragon, whether you're a firefighter or you're a police officer, let's say even a nurse. You need to be carrying yourself so people see that, if you're telling me that I need to stop smoking, do I see you outside of your hospital smoking? Why should I listen to you if you're not taking your own advice? So the same thing comes with police officers or firefighters. Why do I need to listen to you if you can't make me do it physically? Right? Because we don't have time to develop a relationship and develop a rapport with people all the time when we have to take them into custody. Sometimes we have to just show them in no uncertain terms that they're going to be under arrest and they need to follow the rules and do what I say at this point. So obviously there's some people that won't do that. So then you need to be able to back it up. If you can't back it up, the next time you ever have any kind of confrontation, they're not going to listen to you because they don't need to. Which brings us to our next hero. This was Chief Robert J. Mortel of the Paxton, Massachusetts Police Department. Now, Chief Mortel, you look at his photo, he doesn't look overly, gruff or just alpha male or whatever, but his presence has something to do with it. And the story goes like this. I got 3 guys running across the road right now, Chief Robert J. Mortel yelled into his police radio. I had spotted 3 men running from a neighborhood that had just been burglarized. He knew these were the right guys. Known to his friends as Bobby, the chief of the Paxton Police Department had responded to a mutual aid call for a burglary in progress, put out by the Holden Police Department, a neighboring jurisdiction. Also a canine handler, Chief Mortel's bloodhound Ginger was a new partner who had just completed state certification. Detective Al Bourget, an officer with the Holden Police, was the man who called Mortel into service. I asked him to respond and told him, "Bring your new mutt," referring to Ginger. Al and Bobby were longtime professional friends. They worked next door to one another between the 2 small jurisdictions. It was February 1st, 1994, a Tuesday, and as they say in New England, it was wicked cold. 3 known felons were burglarizing a home in Holden when a witness saw them kicking in the door to a house and alerted the police to the crime. As Detective Bourget recounted, we had been experiencing a rash of burglaries in our area for some time, and we formed sort of a loose task force to deal with it. The various agencies around the Holden and Paxton communities were all participating. When a burglary call hit one agency, the neighboring jurisdictions all swarmed in to set up a dragnet. It worked, called Bourget, referring to the success of the task force. We'd caught other burglaries in the act. In fact, Bobby Mortel loved catching B&E, breaking and entering, guys, and he was good at it. Bobby was good for the town and good for the cops. He really was a good guy, and everyone loved him. I loved working with the guy, and he really was very good at police work and at handling crime scenes. Chief Mortel had developed quite a reputation for apprehending burglars, according to former Paxton Police Chief Robert P. Sheehan. Bobby hated housebreakers. He had this thing about them. He chased them to his last breath. In one storied arrest, Mortel went into the woods, chasing 2 suspects on foot for 3 miles. An avid distance runner, Mortel and his young tracking canine, Ginger, simply stayed with the suspects until they fell, totally exhausted. Mortel then held one man down while holding the other at gunpoint. Mortel didn't know the man he was atop was holding a gun hidden underneath his body. It was later discovered when the backup officers came to transport the suspects to jail. As another example of Mortel's skill in finding burglars, Bourget told the story of being all the way over in Worcester when he heard Mortel on the radio calling for assistance on a burglary in progress. Evidently, Mortel had discovered signs of forced entry, but it wasn't clear if the crime was recent or not. As he approached the house, 2 gangsters who were capering inside, watched as he walked up to the door. One of them later told police that he had Mortel in his gun sights, but he didn't shoot at that point because he heard the approaching sirens, and there were lots of them. He just wanted to get away. The suspect ran out the back, only to be confronted by the chief. He told them to lie prone on the ground while he maintained his safety by keeping back, not getting in too close. He held them at gunpoint, called in on the radio for help, and never took his eyes or his attention off of them. At this time, Mortel didn't know the suspects were armed. They'd hidden their guns under them as they lay down on the ground. They planned to ambush the chief if they could get the drop on him. But he wasn't giving them that opportunity. He showed the suspects that he was in command and control, maintaining that cool, composed demeanor that policemen like to call officer presence. Bourget and his partner heard the call and knew Bobby would need their assistance, so they rolled all the way back to Paxton. Meanwhile, the two suspects, prone on the ground, were sizing up the situation with the chief, wondering if they could take him. They tried to draw Bobby toward them, but he wasn't buying. He stood his ground, keeping his pistol trained on them. The suspects were taken into custody without incident and sent to prison. That was a year ago, Bourget said, and then this thing on Kendall Road happened. It was awful. The metropolitan and suburban areas surrounding Worcester, Massachusetts, are a mix of urban neighborhoods and upper-scale communities. In this part of the country, the sprawling neighborhoods have ranch-style homes that are built on large lots. Some of the towns are less affluent, but others are clearly upper-middle-class enclaves. Most have quiet downtowns, and often they leave an outsider with a small-town feel reminiscent of the fabled little village near Raleigh, North Carolina, where crime is someone else's problem. But that image would be false. They have real crimes in these communities, just like everywhere else in America. They need professional peace officers, like those joined together in the self-proclaimed Loose Task Force around Holden and Paxton, Massachusetts. And they need real heroes like Chief Mortel to patrol their streets and protect their neighborhoods. On this fateful day in February, at about 10:45 in the morning, Detective Bourget heard the call of the burglaries that had just occurred. A radio car officer arrived on scene and described the violence of the break-ins. The homes had the outside doors kicked in and the interiors were totally thrashed. The suspects had trampled through the homes, ransacking nearly every drawer and every closet. They vandalized with every step and destroyed things they didn't take. Bourget realized the suspects were on Kendall Road, which was a dead end. He knew there was a real chance of catching these guys, but only if the officers moved quickly and set up a good perimeter. So he called for help from his neighboring city's police force, and Bobby Mortel rolled into the town of Holden to help his brother officers. It was to be his last call as a policeman. The suspects in these Kendall Road burglaries were all known felons who had been terrorizing the central Massachusetts communities just outside of Worcester. The ringleader was Michael D. Souza from Seymour Street in Worcester. Souza had been in and out of court and jail for almost all his adult life. Now, at the ripe old age of 25, he was a hardened career criminal, totally amoral, totally asocial, and a total predator. He was a thief for the most part. He'd done time for residential burglaries, but he also had a history of illegally using firearms. As his crimes graduated to robbery, he practiced what he would do if he surprised a homeowner or met up with a responding police officer. He planned and prepared for how he would take a life. As it turned out, he was training himself for the day he would kill a policeman. The other two suspects, Kenneth D. Paget and Jamie Richards, both 23, were also from Worcester, and they too were well known to the local police. Souza, Paget, and Richards were somewhat organized in their criminal endeavors, and they planned this caper for the Monday following Super Bowl Sunday. But all three of them partied over the weekend, getting high on cocaine and drinking all day Sunday. So on Monday, their hangovers forced them to stay home. They'd wait until Tuesday. On Tuesday, Sousa drove them over to the town of Holden, where they ended up on Kendall Road. On the prowl, they were determining which homes to hit, looking for easy marks in the well-to-do neighborhoods. Kendall Road is about a mile long and dead ends near a reservoir. It ends parallel to Route 31, which is the major thoroughfare that connects the town of Paxton to Holden. Some say the Kendall Road residents added to the police problem by not locking up their homes due to a false perception that they were immune from crime, that crime happened in other communities, not theirs. Naive residents commented that they didn't need to lock their doors or windows. The neighborhood might as well have put up the welcome mat to criminals. Near the end of the street and adjacent to the neighborhoods is the Kendall Reservoir, which supplies drinking water to the area. Sousa drove the three men down to the end of the cul-de-sac, near the reservoir, where they started their crime spree. They were pretty clumsy with their entries. Sousa simply kicked open the doors, which caused wood and glass to shatter into the homes. It also left telltale forensic evidence passed microscopically into the suspect's clothes. Trace evidence that ultimately could be used as evidence to place Sousa at the scene of the crime. Glass shards, wood fibers, oil stains, and paint fragments could be fingerprint quality evidence used to convict all these men. Better than eyewitness testimony, which is always disputed, or stolen property found in the suspect's possession, which is generally explained away as circumstantial and not connected to a crime. The forensic connection to a suspect and the original crime scene is usually the evidence that convicts. If Sousa were to be found with microscopic glass shards, wood fibers, and paint chips in his clothes that all match the damaged items in the victims' homes, how else could he possibly or plausibly explain their presence? Most seasoned detectives will tell you that when you're talking crime scenes, forensics isn't just important to consider. Forensics is everything. Once inside, the men were interested in money and easily fenced items like televisions, stereos, VCRs, and jewelry, which could support their lifestyle of drug use and partying. They were on Kendall Road long enough to ransack 3 homes before a neighbor saw them. The police rolled into action, and when a witness called to report that a break-in had occurred at 93 Kendall Road. Just as responding officers were pulling up to investigate, another call came in to dispatch that a carjacking had just occurred on a service road near Pine Hill Reservoir. The suspects fleeing the area had evidently lost control of their stolen van when they hit some black ice near Pine Hill Dam. Careening out of control, they sideswiped a Worcester City Water Department truck that was parked near the roadway. The suspects then abandoned their getaway vehicle and ran over the workers who were near their truck. At gunpoint, Sousa and the others demanded that the truck's keys from the city crew. Initially, the crew didn't respond and the foreman didn't want to submit. In either disbelief or defiance, the foreman started to walk away. Sousa responded by firing a shot and said, "Give me your effing keys or I'll blow your head off." The foreman realized Sousa would kill him if he didn't cooperate, and gave up his keys to the truck. He told his crew to run off into the woods, where they waited until police arrived. The suspects sped off in the water department truck, and in their haste, they lost control of that vehicle too, running into a ditch. With the truck mired in the snow and mud, they were forced to abandon their stolen vehicle. Fleeing on foot, they ran about a mile across a frozen portion of Kendall Reservoir, heading toward Route 31. When Detective Bourget called Chief Mortel, into service for his particular call, there was nothing routine about it, even though working together was very much routine for the two men in small-town America. Local officers work with neighboring police, county sheriffs, or state troopers the same way major city officers work with their beat partners. Most people in America don't realize that the majority of police agencies nationwide have less than 15 police officers. Police departments with 2 or 3 officers have to use outside mutual aid assistance on virtually every emergency they handle. Searching for criminals that were this violent, this predatory, required scores of police officers to provide the necessary tactical advantage. The situation was well above the staffing capabilities of most police departments in the country, and clearly beyond any of the departments in the immediate Worcester area. The Holden Police Department did the only thing they could do in this case. They put out the call for mutual aid. When he got there to the area where the suspects were last seen, Detective Bourget started to track them through the snow. The snow wasn't particularly heavy in some spots, so the footprints weren't always plainly visible. Bourget recalled, "I'm chasing after these guys and I realize I might lose them. I was hoping Chief Mortel would get there soon with his dog, Ginger, and they could take over the tracking. Besides, I knew how good Bobby was at chasing housebreakers and how he hated them. That would give the officers the edge they needed to capture these dangerous men." When Chief Mortel responded to the call for assistance, he was updated on the subsequent carjacking, the robbery, and the shots fired. He knew the level of violence doesn't get much worse. He had his canine partner with him as he rolled to the area. Paxton is southwest of Holden, and Mortel had to take Route 31 to get to the scene where the suspects were last seen. As he was driving into Holden, he heard Holden police officers broadcast that they had the suspects running into the woods. At this point, Souza and his gang had made their way across the frozen reservoir and were running up the embankment to the highway just as Chief Mortel was approaching. The suspects didn't slow for traffic as they ran across the road and into the woods on the other side. "I got 3 guys running across the road right now," the chief yelled into the radio. Then he left his police cruiser and his dog behind and pursued the men on foot, broadcasting that he was chasing the suspects through the woods. Ginger wasn't a patrol dog. She was a tracker, but she was upset at being left behind in the police car. After bonding with Bobby Mortel, she wanted to be at her partner's side. They'd always been together before, and she could probably sense the danger. When the chief didn't take her, she wailed and yelled while she sat alone in the cruiser. As Mortel ran up to the embankment into the woods, the 3 suspects split apart. Paget and Richards ran off to the chief's right, but being the good runner that he was, he stayed with them, catching up to them as he got to the top of the hill. The chief soon had the tactical advantage over the suspects as he positioned himself for the capture. He repeatedly yelled out, "Freeze, police!" Paget and Richards helped draw Mortel's attention away from Souza, and for that, they would be just as responsible for what was about to happen. Souza moved in the opposite direction from his crime partners so that he could work his way behind the pursuing officer. He was searching for the high ground one needs to be effective as a sniper. He used his crime partners to draw the chief into a position to false security and clear vulnerability. When Mortel yelled out, "Freeze, police!" for the 3rd time, Paget and Richards stopped to surrender. With the momentary cooperation of the 2 suspects, Mortel became distracted. In the excitement of overtaking the suspects, he lost track of Michael Souza. Like the predator he was, Souza, lying down on the ground in a sniper's attitude, had set the trap for the pursuing officers. Souza opened fire, shooting 12 rounds at Chief Mortel, hitting him twice in the left side of his chest. The rounds tore into Mortel's heart and ripped into his aorta, causing massive bleeding. Gravely wounded, Mortel didn't retreat from the fight, but turned and opened fire on Souza, getting off 6 shots and causing Souza to retreat back down the hill. Mortel took a few steps after him, but he had lost too much blood. As he slipped into unconsciousness, the chief went down. Momentarily, it was strangely silent. Only Ginger could still be heard crying from Mortel's car. Within a few minutes, Paxton Police Sergeant Michael Ahern called on the radio to report that Chief Mortel had been shot. Princeton Police Chief Charles Schmoll and West Boylston Police Detective Francis Glynn tried to comfort Chief Mortel. Several officers worked together to pick him up and carry him down the roadway. An emergency medical crew feverishly worked on Mortel as they transported him. But he was bleeding internally, and nothing more could be done. Chief Bobby Mortel was transported to the University of Massachusetts Hospital, where he died in the emergency room. By now, 20 police departments had sent over 150 officers to the scene, where a perimeter was set to capture the suspects. The force had been buttoned up. There was no segment of the woods or roadway that didn't have officers within eyesight of one another. In what was the largest dragnet in Holden or Paxton history, state police helicopters with heat-seeking cameras were brought in to assist in the search. "We'll freeze them out," one officer remarked to his partner, as they stood at their post and waited. The officers tapped their feet and moved about in the wicked cold, trying to keep their blood circulating. But they were taking pleasure in the cold at that point, knowing that the suspects were freezing too. As the afternoon passed, it felt like 20 below. As officers combed the area, Souza made his way over the Lindgren lumber, an old sawmill on the Reservoir Street. He was walking down a road near the woods when Paxton Police Sergeant Donald Ball and Massachusetts Trooper James Jowarek saw him. The officers had the advantage as they closed in on the suspect from behind. With their guns drawn, they ordered Souza to stop. But Souza, ever defiant, refused to stop or turn to acknowledge the officer's commands. Again and again, Sergeant Ball ordered Souza to stop, but the man continued to walk away. Finally, the officers engaged him in hand-to-hand combat, subduing and disarming him without seriously injuring him. Without firing a shot, the officers were able to take away Souza's 9mm pistol, the weapon he used to kill Chief Mortel. The officers retained their dignity by handling the suspect with appropriate professional demeanor, never letting their emotions over the death of Chief Mortel override their good judgment. Within hours, the other two suspects were also captured without incident. All three went to trial and were convicted for their roles in the murder of Chief Mortel. Souza was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. His co-conspirators each received 15 years to life with the possibility of parole. An officer had fallen in the line of duty. But Chief Mortel is not just a hero for the way he died. He is a hero for the way he lived his life. Ironically, as Detective Bourget was responding to the scene that February day, he passed Mortel's wife. He had known Pamela Mortel for a number of years, and he also knew the Mortels' 3 children. The high school sweethearts had a very good marriage. When Al Bourget passed Pam on the road, he couldn't know what was ahead. But he knew that Pam was always supportive of Bobby's career as a policeman, and that she was very proud he had been made chief. Bourget told me Bobby was always on duty. He slept with one ear to the scanner, and if one of his guys was on a car stop and it didn't sound right to Bobby, he'd throw on his gear and ride over to back up the cop. He was that kind of guy. Always there for her husband. Pam loved him for being that kind of guy. He was a wonderful husband, father, and son. Chief Bobby Mortel worked every day to protect and serve the city of Paxton. A very professional peace officer, he was highly experienced and well educated. He earned a BA degree from the Anna Maria College and was pursuing his MA degree when he was murdered. In his routine duties, he was committed to providing quality service to the people of Paxton. He was courteous and friendly, and those who knew him loved and respected him. Bobby Mortel was not the only hero in what happened that day. To start, every officer who had a hand in the manhunt for the criminals could be considered a hero. The officers who stood the post for the perimeter on that brutally cold day in February should be on the list of heroes as well. The officers also who tracked down the burglars and captured the gunmen are on the list too. And the men who carried Chief Mortel down the hill will take the memories of that day with them to their graves. Detective Al Bourget is a hero, not only for the good job he did that day, but also for the excellent follow-up work he did to help put the killers in prison. They are all top drawer in anyone's book. Others are uncelebrated heroes. On that day, Holden police officer Richard Westerback, a 25-year veteran of the force who responded to the original burglary scene, is a reluctant hero. He was very upset he wasn't participating in the manhunt, angrily saying, "I should have been out on the perimeter. I should have been there for Bobby." Anyone can understand how Officer Westerback felt. But he was needed to control the original crime scene. He had to protect the very evidence that could convict the suspects of the first-degree murder of the police officer. And as it turned out, some young crime scene investigators had started to muck up the evidence before Officer Westerback refocused their procedures. His role was no less important than Sergeant Ball's and Trooper Jarowek's when they captured Souza. Though Ball and Jarowek took Souza into custody, without Westerback's crime scene work, it might have been difficult to convict the man and put him in prison for the rest of his life. The loss of Chief Bobby Mortel is too well known to members of his family, who are heroes for carrying on his name and his traditions of service to the community. An officer's family is always forced to pay a premium for our police service. In so doing, they ultimately pay the premium for our freedom and for our life. An officer's family may resent the failure of society to fully understand or appropriate or appreciate the devastation that hits a household when a police officer falls in the line of duty. No words can explain the pain, the result, the missing touch of a loved one, the loss of an approving smile, the absence of a father or mother, no longer there to watch the children grow. Mortel was murdered while trying to protect someone he'd never met. In this case, it was some homeowners over on Kendall Road. How will they remember him 10 years from now? The Paxton Police Station is named after Robert J. Mortel. The Massachusetts Police Association awarded Chief Mortel the Medal of Honor, while the New England Association of Chiefs of Police awarded him a posthumous commendation. Visitors to the Paxton Town Center can review a granite and brass plaque that memorializes the ultimate sacrifice Mortel made for his fellow citizens. Quinsigamond Community College has an annual charity golf tournament for the college scholarship program known as the Mortel. Some of the funds support the creation of the school's public safety memorial garden, which is being developed to honor students who pursue public safety careers and die in the line of duty. At Anna Maria College, the Institute for Public Safety is now called the Mortel Institute for Public Safety. And remember Route 31, the main thoroughfare connecting Holden to Paxton? It's now called the Chief Robert Mortel Memorial Highway. There was a final loss for the Paxton family. Immediately after Bobby Mortel's death, Ginger, his canine partner, stayed a week at the home of another officer before being taken back to Pam and Bobby's house. But after living another week without Bobby, she passed away in her sleep. Detective Bourget described Ginger as being lost without Bobby's companionship. Bobby's widow Pam agreed. She died from a broken heart. You never know. You never know what people go through. You never know the effect people have on other people. What it is that Chief Mortel did, the way he treated people, the way he acted, he knew that he had a legacy to leave. He knew he had a lifestyle to lead, that he wanted to make sure that people knew that he was there to serve them, and he gave everything for them. And it cannot be understated the hard work that he did, the sacrifice that he gave, and the people that honor him by continuing to live good lives and looking out for each other because of the example that he gave them. I'm going to read one more story. Now, this book's a long book. It's a pretty thick book. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of heroes in this book. And if you're hearing these, I encourage you, go out and buy this book. There's a lot of good stories. If you're liking this, there's so many lessons to learn from these people who gave everything, who worked hard and want to do what was right. And probably some of them still want to do what's right. Deputy Richard A. Bach of the Waukesha County, Wisconsin Sheriff's Department. More than 5,000 police officers have been killed in the line of duty since 1973. According to the National Law Enforcement Memorial Fund, that's an average of one every other day. The horrific number includes state, local, and federal law enforcement. Police officers know the danger of law enforcement. Two types of so-called routine calls are often the most troublesome and problematic. The domestic call, because emotional family members may become irrational and violent, and traffic stops, because the motorist or other occupants of the stopped car can be gang members, dope dealers, murderers, escaped convicts, or under the influence of drugs. Deputy Richard A. Bach knows firsthand the dangers of traffic stops. On one such stop, he was taken hostage at gunpoint when an escaped convict didn't want to go back to prison. Fortunately for Bach, his partner was able to get a clear shot, which saved Bach's life. The escapee died on the scene. Deputy Bach went back to work and continued his regular patrol duties. 2 years later, while working alone in the same highway, he experienced an even more traumatic event during a traffic stop. He was shot 4 times at close range. Although it can be pretty cold in Wisconsin in March, there was no snow on the road in the early morning of March 3, 1988. Only remnants of previous snowfall on the ground. A little after 4 a.m. on Interstate 94, the highway that connects Madison and Milwaukee, a car driven by Dr. Glenn Willett passed Deputy Bach's patrol car at high speed. Bach turned on his siren and emergency lights and pulled the speeding car over. Unfortunately, Dr. Willett, he did not have driver's license with him. Deputy Bach informed the doctor that out-of-state drivers without a valid license were required to post a bond to guarantee their court appearance. He asked the doctor to follow him back to a convenience store where Willett could cash traveler checks to post his bond. Then he could continue on his way to Minnesota with his wife and young child. Bach pulled onto the highway, and the doctor followed. As they pulled out, Bach noticed a third car approaching very slowly behind him. At first, the act seemed to be a considerate and friendly gesture. It appeared that the driver wanted to stay back to give the 2 cars pulling out into the highway ample time. But when Bach did a U-turn across the highway median, the third car followed him. It's illegal to make a U-turn across a median unless you are a police officer or driving an emergency vehicle. Bach became curious at this point, slowing down so he could get a license plate number and call dispatch to see if the car was stolen, or, at least, who the owner was. The slower he went, the slower the 2 cars behind him went. Finally, he pulled over to the shoulder, as did the doctor. Third car passed the 2 cars on the shoulder, then pulled in front of Bach's patrol car. According to courtroom testimony, the police reports, this is what happened next. The driver, who was alone, exited his vehicle and began walking toward Bach's patrol car. Bach exited his vehicle and told the driver 3 times to stop approaching. The driver, who had his hands in his pocket and appeared agitated, finally complied. Bach patted the driver down and asked for his driver's license. The driver, who said his name was Alfredo H. Camacho, responded to the request for a driver's license by saying, "Me no got." During Bach's cross-examination at trial, he could not remember whether he had patted Camacho down, but Dr. Willett testified that he had. Contrary to Camacho's story, Dr. Willett also testified that Bach did not use any type of force or threat. Bach instructed Camacho to return to his vehicle and sit down. Bach then approached Camacho's vehicle to inquire about the spelling of Camacho's name and his date of birth. Upon receiving this information, Bach returned to his squad car and called to verify whether Camacho possessed a valid driver's license. He learned that Camacho did not have a driver's license. Bach then called for a city squad to assist and take Dr. Willett to post bond. When Officer Charles Moranchek showed up shortly afterward, Dr. Willett left the scene as instructed, following Officer Moranchek. The doctor must have thought this night would never end. Without drawing his gun, Bach approached Camacho's vehicle on the driver's side. Camacho told Bach that he was looking for his cousin, Trooper Santiago Camacho, so he could give him a gift of tacos. Trooper Santiago Camacho, who is not related to Alfredo Camacho, would later testify that he had pulled Alfredo Camacho over on February 28th, a Sunday, and issued a ticket for speeding and driving without a license. At that time, the defendant commented on Trooper Camacho's gun, saying that he also had a gun. Alfredo Camacho told detectives after he was arrested that he had bought the gun on Monday. He would later testify that he bought the gun because he was very angry with Trooper Camacho for giving him a citation. He thought it was unfair for a Hispanic to give another Hispanic a citation. From his own testimony, it appeared that Alfredo Camacho had purchased a gun with the intent to exact retribution for receiving a traffic ticket. As Deputy Bach leaned toward the open window to speak once again with Camacho, Camacho suddenly spun, grabbed an automatic weapon from under the seat, and while smiling, shot Bach 4 times at close range. 1 bullet hit Bach's walkie-talkie, 2 struck his upper chest, and 1 hit him in the abdomen. 2 additional bullets missed their targets altogether. Bach made it back to his squad car, and with his car for cover, shot 6 rounds through Camacho's back window. The pattern his bullets made was a perfect circle. Several hit the back seat on the driver's side, but the steel framework kept them from hitting Camacho. Bach called dispatch and told them he was hurt and bleeding badly. Anticipating the need for a transfusion, he gave his blood type and said he might need a helicopter for transport to the nearest hospital. Just as he completed his call, much to his amazement, he heard the assailant's car start up and saw him drive away from the scene. Bach was badly wounded, but determined not to let Camacho get away, so he followed Camacho at high speed for about a mile. Camacho finally stopped when he saw the second squad car also giving chase. Shortly afterward, Trooper Santiago Camacho arrived at the scene. He had been dispatched to interpret for Alfredo Camacho. A squad car rushed Bach to the emergency room of the local hospital where the slug in his shoulder was removed. He had lost a great deal of blood, and one of the chest shots had penetrated the lung. Surgeons removed part of his lung and the bullet in his abdomen in a 6-hour surgery. The slug that caused the lung damage was removed from his upper back in a second surgery the next day. Bach was not wearing a bulletproof vest when he was wounded. At that time, wearing a vest was required only when an officer was on SWAT, or whenever police action indicated that firepower might be required. Otherwise, vests were optional. If deputies wanted to wear a vest, they could, if they personally paid for it. But on a police officer's salary, the $400 to $500 investment was hard to make. In any case, the 3 shots that hit Deputy Bach would have been above and below the vest, according to a sheriff's spokesperson. After several weeks in the hospital, Bach was discharged and, with no long-term disability, returned to his patrol duties. Promoted to a detective a few months later, he has continued to serve and protect the citizens of Waukesha County, Wisconsin. As a detective, Bach still stops a lot of cars, and he still makes the stop by the book. The biggest change since he was shot, he said, is that time after time after time, whenever I approach a car, I think, will it happen again? That's always there, you know. You just don't know. For his actions that day, Deputy Bach was awarded the American Police Hall of Fame Silver Star for bravery and their Legion of Valor Award. He also received the Military Order of the Purple Heart National Law Enforcement Citation, the Valor Award from the Wisconsin Professional Police Association, and awards from other state and local organizations. For his community involvement, Bach was recently honored with the Wisconsin Vietnam Veteran Outstanding Achievement Award for his 8-year service as a town board member and his activities on behalf of charitable organizations such as the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Alfredo Camacho, an illegal alien from Mexico, was found guilty of attempted first-degree murder while armed with a dangerous weapon. He received a 24-year sentence for attempted murder and a 5-year sentence for using a gun. Upon his release from the Wisconsin State Prison System, he will be handed over to the Immigration and Naturalization Service for deportation. As incredible as it may sound, Camacho appealed his conviction on the basis that he shot Deputy Bach in self-defense. Although the state court appeals ordered a new trial, the Wisconsin Supreme Court upheld his conviction. Deputy Bach did nothing to warrant being shot except wear the uniform of a police officer. For that, he almost died. This incident perfectly illustrates the dangers our police officers face every day simply by choosing law enforcement as a career. The next time you're stopped for a traffic violation, you may wonder why the officer approaches your car cautiously, asks you to remain inside, and usually stands behind or in front of your door. It's part of their training. They don't know who you are or if you are armed. As Bach's shooting illustrates, when a motorist opens fire on an officer without warning from 2 feet away, the officer has little chance to protect himself. As Paul E. Butcher, district attorney for Waukesha County, stated in a letter to me, the only way Deputy Bach survived was his will to live. How many lives did Deputy Richard Bach save that fateful morning in which he almost lost his own? If Alfredo Camacho was willing to shoot down a police officer in cold blood over a traffic citation, who would be safe? I asked Detective Bach's commander to try to pinpoint for me the moment Bach became a hero. Was it when he put on his uniform the day of the hostage situation? Was it when he kept his cool during the hostage situation and tried to talk the escapee out of harming anyone else, even while the man pointed a gun at his head? Was it when he returned fire after taking 4 bullets in an ambush? Or was it when he chased the shooter after being shot multiple times? The commander's one-word response spoke volumes. Yes. You see, we never know. It's those people who go out of their way to serve other people by putting on a uniform, not knowing what they're getting into, and going out and trying to find people that are hurting other people, who have the potential to hurt other people. Those are the people that are heroes. Now, a lot of people, I have people on here all the time who say, well, I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy. I do a job. You do a job that you choose to go and try to help other people. You take time away from your family. You take time away from your life, your children, your friends, your desires that your hobbies, things you like to do, the thing that gets your mind off of work. You choose to go and serve other people and help other people because there's something in you that says, I need to do that. There's something in you that says, you know what, I don't have another choice. That I have to go do that, because if I don't do it, who's going to do it? Had Officer Bach not chosen to be shot and still chase this guy for a mile, because he knew that if he didn't keep eyes on him, he didn't find out where he was, he didn't go try to stop him, who else was he going to try to go hurt? That's a hero. These are heroes. These are heroes, these people that I've spoken about today, the people that I talk to on a daily basis. Now, they may not have been the people I talk to. Some of them, they're just cops, or they're just firefighters, or they're just, nurses, or they're teachers, or they're veterans. They did a job. Some of them, go through life, they go through their career and they don't get shot. They don't go through these traumatic events, but they spend their entire career, 20, 30 years of their life, serving other people, doing things for other people, being there for other people. That's what makes them a hero. The fact that they're willing to go and say, I want to serve my country, I want to serve my community, I want to serve my family, my friends, my tribe. All for people I don't even know sometimes. Those emergency room nurses who see somebody come in, they may not even know who they are, but they're willing to get in there, and then they're willing to work and try to help save these people. Those frontline EMTs, firefighters who go out and they try to be on that front line and go help people rushing into buildings that are on fire for people they don't even know. For people who are driving like idiots on the road because they don't care about anybody else. The police officer that goes and contacts them and stops them, not realizing or knowing whether or not they could be murderers, like he said, or wanted felons, or people who do not want to go back to prison, and they think that the police are there to take them back to prison when they're just telling them to use their blinker when they change lanes, or whatever the case may be. A lot of bad guys have been captured because of the traffic stop, because of no tail light or something like that. And now we have legislature that are trying to stop police officers from doing their job by getting criminals off the road. And the criminals are becoming emboldened by it. You embolden. It's like your grass. Do you want to water your weeds? No. You're gonna strengthen them, and you're gonna embolden them to go and choke out your grass and make your yard look horrible, right? Well, that's the same thing. You embolden these criminals to do what they're doing, and you take away the ability for the hero to go and stop them and save their society and their community. It's going to make it worse. They're not going to sit back and be like, "Oh, okay, well, they're letting me do this, so I'm not going to go commit crimes now anymore." It's not how it works. Police Heroes by Chuck Whitlock. Check out this book. It's a good book. There's a lot of stories in it. You want to get motivated, you want to get inspired, check out this book. Read it. I'm not going to, obviously, I read 3 stories out of here. There's so many more in here that I can make 7 podcasts out of this book and keep going. Maybe at some point I'll see if I can get Chuck Whitlock on here. But nevertheless, know who you are. Support those in your family who continue to serve. And if you don't have people in your family, or you're not a police officer, a firefighter, or a first responder, or veteran yourself, and you just like hearing these stories, you like hearing the people I talk to, whatever the case may be, support them. Let them know that you support them. Even if you're stopped at a stoplight and one pulls up next to you, let them know that you support them. Because these heroes are willing to go do things that other people aren't. They're willing to run towards the gunfire. They're willing to run towards that burning building and save people out of it that they don't even know that have potential to be good or bad. Doesn't matter. Let them know that you support them. Let them know that you that if they need anything, because they are heroes. And those of you that continue to do this job, that whether you're a police officer, firefighter, veteran, whether you're a nurse, whether you continue to do the job, thank you for everything that you do. Because without you, and I say it all the time, we would not have the country or the community or the society in which we do have if there aren't people that are willing to stand up and do what is right. Because you are a hero. So, if you want to hear more episodes from the What's a Hero podcast, if you've not heard us before, you're not subscribed yet, go subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, the Amazon girl, whatever. If you want to hear every episode that we have or find your platform, you can go to our website, thewhatsaheropodcast.buzzsprout.com. All previous episodes are on there. There's links to your favorite podcast platform, and you can learn a little bit about us. You can additionally go onto whatever social media you like to listen to or look at or get on. Most of the time, Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn. You can find us on there. You can talk to us. You can ask questions. We are here for you. We just want to motivate, inspire folks. So get a hold of us. Subscribe to our podcast. Download episodes. You can have those with you at any time. And become part of the solution, not the problem. And go out and support the heroes that support you. So, I know this was a little bit of a different podcast today, but it is what it is, and I really enjoyed this one. And like I said, check out the book Police Heroes by Chuck Whitlock. Good book. So until next time, I've been Ken Frownfelter, and this has been the What's a Hero podcast. We are clear.